I want to do a special thank to Veronica, Sara, and Zaka that contributed to this video enormously. And I also want to introduce the person that is going to be moderating the final discussion. Hold on to the things that you heard and that you thought in your questioning and answering before. That person is Zachary Mainen. He's the director of the Champalimaud Neuroscience Program. He did his PhD at the University of California, San Diego in neuroscience. And is really interested in many aspects of decision making, going from decision making between neurons, maybe, and in societies as well. Welcome, Zach. Sorry, I actually forgot that at this point I need to also invite our speakers to come and sit in this beautiful couch with plant.
Could we? Hi. While the speakers are getting settled, could we turn up the lights on the audience? I think full lights, or mostly full lights would be great. Perfect. Great. So as Scott very nicely introduced, the idea of our event was to consider, for effecting social change, instead of looking to our leaders for help, if we look to ourselves, if we look for bottom-up effects in decision-making. Yes, you deserve it. Keep going, keep going. Do I get one?
Yes.
It's okay. If we look for social change, we're going to need wine, clearly. Okay, you have to drink it too. It's not enough to pour it.
I tried to get you some. Here you go.
Let's toast.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Cheers.
Cheers. Let's give them all a big hand.
Now we're ready.
So essentially, we're asking the question to enact social change rather than by, say, voting and by trying to affect leadership. If we instead ask the question what we can do about it by ourselves or by our interactions with each other, what do we do? And we've heard from three very different sorts of research groups that are all in different ways looking at how we interact, how social systems work, from the level of interactions among groups which are almost totally unconscious but which have big effects on collective behavior, to those which we're partly conscious of, our status markings, and then to those that are entirely intentional, that are very, very well thought out, all trying to sort of understand how we relate to each other. You all have also been posed this question about how we relate to each other, how that might be better. So I think the first thing we'd like to do is hear from a couple of you. So not just to ask questions of our guests, but to offer your own thoughts. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to share what you just discussed or a thought about this issue, I'd be delighted to hear from you. And Scott and Rita, I think, will help, but I'm, I'm going to set down my wine. I see a brave soul in the back. This is an example of the group, what was it called? The group effect, the group inhibition effect that you saw in the video. No one will help me. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the talks, and it's a very interesting topic. Tamera, I do think that we do need to do something to make more sustainable societies. At the same time, though, we're looking for answers in with experiments with humans, and as Iain showed in the first experiment with humans in the looking situation, in two different scenarios, you have two different responses. So, and then in the locust, for example, their interaction cannot be about love, clearly, because it's about eating each other. So how do we go about selecting the right things that society already has, like enormous infrastructure that gives us cars, that we don't know how to make cars, but we can use cars. How do we go about choosing the right things and throwing out what we don't want?
Would you attempt to answer that that question? What would you throw out?
So the first thing, the thing that I think they're onto is the issue of leadership within your own groups. How to be a revolutionary in your own community. So that's the issue that I would push. But I want to hear from them because I haven't thought about this much.
Any of you like to address the issue of leadership? Should we hear more thoughts from the audience first? Yes?
Do I need the microphone? Or?
I think your
one.
mics should all be.
Okay.
If you feel compelled to speak, do so. But we can also hear more thoughts from the audience too.
Ah, that was a question. No, then we gather a few more questions. That's great. Super.
I think there's one ready.
Scott.
Hi. Is it my turn?
It's you. It's you.
Yeah, it's me. Just to break the ice. I was thinking about your question, and also I was having my own thoughts about this, how we change the world. I mean, it seems to me that this has been an ever-on sort of question throughout time, throughout, since kind of mankind and humans, we've always sort of been thinking about, where are we going, how are we going to make the world better. And it seems to me that we know what needs to be done, but then there is a big gap between that and when the question is asked, what could we do ourselves? What would we change within ourselves, within our character, within the way that we see things, within our actions? Then the issue is completely different. It seems to me that it's easier to actually suggest we could do this, this, and that. But then when we look deep at ourselves, we find it very difficult to overcome certain obstacles that I don't know, why they exist, or I suppose I could sort of think about it and I could see that there is a lot of pressure for us not to change. But at the same time, this time, today, in the kind of crisis that we are living, I think that we are all in a kind of a trigger situation. So if someone suddenly sort of decides to do something really, really nice and with that is able to change something, maybe we can actually sort of lead on. But if that is the way, that means that we need someone to lead us. And I actually think that we don't need someone to lead us. we should lead ourselves, and we should not try to lead others, but we should try to lead ourselves. So for me, the biggest difficulty is to how do you, and sort of linking back to what was sort of said here, because I'm already a bit lost in my thoughts. I suppose everyone has noticed that, but still. But the thing is, the issue is, why is it so difficult to cooperate?
I think you make a good point. We all have ideas, but what's the gap between good ideas, good intentions, and actually getting it done? And I think I would like to ask Barbara or Benjamin to I don't know, perhaps they must have some thoughts on that, because that's where they are working.
I think Darwin has some thoughts on that. I mean, I think, if you look elsewhere in biology, this is not a unique problem to humans. It's related to,
Passing on our genes, and so defecting and being nasty to our less relatives or less distant related persons is something that we can't avoid.
Defection doesn't mean being nasty. It just means not contributing to the public good. And so, I mean, it's a different issue when someone is actually nasty, but defection is typically just not contributing.
I think there's okay, now this is leading in a different direction.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I think we are just before understanding and awakening to the fact that this separation of even my species, my family, and all of this is giving place to the insight that we are all part of a life system which is global, which is a planetary life system, and this is a totally different consciousness to look at these kind of processes, where it is much more, where parameters or principles of cooperation move much more to the center, to the whole. And I think there's a very strong sense of separation in the human of modern society, but I don't think that this is innate. I don't think that this is given to us by whatever there is. But I think it's
genetic. Humans are inherently more pro-social than most other primates, and that's genetically conveyed as a sort of inherent trait.
Say that again?
I mean, humans are more pro-social than other primates, and that's genetic.
Yes.
Pro-social, like cooperative.
Yeah, more likely to, if they receive rewards, more likely to give to others, much more so. So they're not as selfish as other apes, but we're still selfish apes.
I mean, maybe the question, one part of the question as I heard it was also, when we know that what we would have to do, why don't we do it? No, why don't we take this step? And when I try to think of it, I come to questions like, well, I personally, as one person, I cannot change the energy supply system of the planet. I cannot make the change that I need to see in the world in order to get more, to see that the baseline of our community comes to cooperation, solidarity, what was mentioned a lot of times, instead of exploitation and suppression. So the first thing I have to have a vision of is how I can socialize with people who have the same aim, or at least the same wish. And then I am instantly confronted with, can I tell him what I really see, how I would, and is he cooperative, is he really, I'm with humans then, and then I need solutions which need time to evolve. So I need to get to the courage to really make a new humane system.
Talking about courage, I think one of the things that makes it difficult for us to cooperate is fear of losing face, for example. Fear of being not so clever, fear of being stupid, fear of appearing not qualified. in some measures. Have you ever experienced like, you know, holding poker face situation? Like you hold your face like this in social situation, not moving a muscle. That's typical when you try to protect yourself, like I'm not knowing what I'm gonna say, and I'm holding poker face and trying to look clever. It's kind of funny because when you protect yourself like this, you are protecting your own safety. At the same time, you are stressing other people. Because if somebody talks and somebody listens with a poker face, there's nothing happening here. The stress level of the speaker goes up all the time. So why do we have to pretend we are more clever than we are? Because nobody wants to actually be in a company of people who are more clever than he is. I mean, these things baffle me.
But people who exhibit excessive trust tend to be, in the long term, it's not a good thing for them, at least within society as it currently is. And also, as people get older, they tend to be more trusting. And they're more susceptible to exploitation. And so you really have to resolve this issue of exploitation and defection in order for something like trust to work. So fear is very adaptive. These types of issues of being cautious is very adaptive.
Yeah.
So you have to change the entire sort of, I mean, this relates to your issue, you know, how do you manage to change enough people or enough proportion to actually allow this to then become a different regime? And furthermore, how do you then prevent defection from propagating within that type of society? And these are issues that, you know, as groups get larger, so one thing I'd be interested in knowing more about with your particular experiment is, you know, as groups get larger, it becomes harder to prevent defection. And so they tend to become modular. And then the modular units tend to then police defection. You need some sort of policing system. I mean, I'm not talking about literally the police, I'm just talking about some sort of inherent social system that punishes or embarrasses or whatever people who tend to not contribute to the public good.
Tamera, it has a size on the order of 100, 150 people, so it's sort of at this size which is still small enough that everyone knows everyone, and this has not yet become.
I bet you there are groups. I bet you there's some sort of. It's too big.
Even at 100, even at 100 people.
We are currently in a movement. We said we need subgroups in order to have effective communication, and we then now reflecting the last 2 years, we see we need to re-establish a very common layer. So because to create subgroups creates what you say. It creates. You start to look at each other, you don't know really what they do, and you need a massive layer of trust to not start to project sort of mistrust.
There's one just popped up into my mind. There's this movie company, Pixar, that has like several thousand people working, and they are working in production-based subgroups. And actually they build trust between the groups that are working. They are not working separately, but they have several phases in their productions where one group is showing their work to the other groups, and it's not finished. It's just unfinished work. We have been working like 1 month, and this is what we got. Tell us, what do you think? And they are sharing in a very concrete way, very trustfully, the result, not the results of the work, but the unfinished work in process. And I admire that organization because they have made like 12 blockbusters in a row, and no film company has done that ever in world's history. And that might be one explanation.
I think they also work like effing crazy. They work really hard.
They work really hard.
Their work culture is very intense.
Yeah.
But the problem when you form groups is that it encourages trust within the group, but then it encourages conflict between the group. And it's in fact the conflict between the group that creates the trust within the group. So this is the type of issue that we see permeating through societies.
That's true. And there you come to the question, are you dealing consciously with this? Are you getting conscious about this pattern that you raise your power through excluding others? Is this, are you willing, you as a human, me as a human, to see, okay, but this is not a very fair pattern.
Yeah.
No, my basic commitment in life is to go for cooperation. So I will have to overcome this, to get to know this pattern within myself,
Right.
and then to be ready that others tell me, now you are against with this pattern, so please change, and then be ready to change.
You're right, you have to have that awareness.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you come to organizational patterns where I think as a humanity we don't even know them yet, because we don't know how we are when we trust.
In a way, I still wanted to come back to this question originally where you asked what to do, how to take that decision, how to make that jump. And it's actually a good place to come into, because a big part of why we cannot make this decision is because we all agree that to a certain level we agree that there is that our society is not built on trust, and that there is a lot of discrimination, violence, and whatsoever. But the extent of how much the unconscious parts of our self steer society, I think we seldom face that. And I think a group of people who say as a group, we want to make this unconscious, which is running the show on this planet, and this, I think this is very clear. I mean, for me, it's a real phenomena that the Homo sapiens sapiens, this kind of supposedly intelligent being, is destroying his home planet right now. And it's highly irrational. How we act on this planet is highly irrational. And there must be the question, why is that? We have intelligent answers to so many things, but the extent of how much unconscious fear, and that's not even the fear that we have been talking about here, but unconscious fear patterns are running the show, is immense. And it needs, in a way, people who come together, who bring light into these unconscious parts. And to add even that this is not only a personal or individual act of bravery, it needs groups, communities, clusters of people who decide that we will create an environment where this trust is reinforced. And because right now it's you can make a spiritual or political act of whatever, willpower, and there are certain individuals throughout history who can make this stand, but at a large we are enforced to go back into patterns of distrust, fear, and disguising ourselves. And just the idea to do this personal work and at the same time generate a society that will reinforce trust-building patterns is an idea that I haven't seen put into practice. Actually, matter of fact, it's mostly two directions. Either I am on a spiritual, personal path of self-development, and I'm really against all these political fighters, or I am on a political, taking a political stand against the society we are living in, but I'm really not so keen on changing myself or talking esoterics or all this. So this is two fractions, and these two must come together to create a new society, which then can bring forth a new individual. Yeah.
I think that's very much what we have in mind by this idea that somehow change at the group level comes from change at the individual level, but normally we think of this as two different things. Scott, I think you had another comment or question.
Hello. Oh. Hello. I think I'm going to make a little bit of a step back in this discussion because we are talking about society and how wrong is society and how can we make it right, but we haven't thought about it so far. Where did it take us, this so wrong society? It takes us to, now we have a better quality of life, we have better medicines, we have, I can walk on the street without being afraid of being attacked by an animal, which could have been doing like 1,000 years ago. So what's so wrong about competition? I think if you take it to an extreme level, it's really, really bad. But healthy competition takes us to evolution, I guess. So why is it so wrong?
I don't think the competition is wrong.
But let's parse this into two. There's two different points you're making. One is, okay, so is society really so bad? Isn't there a lot that's good about it? But then there's a second issue. You're proposing that the way we got here was competition. But I think those may be related, yes, but those aren't really necessarily one following from the other.
Yes, yes.
Yeah? But so if you want to speak to either of those points.
I do agree that I think it's statistically proved that the world is less violent than it has been in the history nowadays. I think competition and cooperation are both good modes of interaction. The only thing I'm suggesting is that we should be very careful in recognizing which mode are we using and where. Competition are value judgments and measuring things. They are good when we are making decisions and choosing better or worse, cheaper, more expensive. That competition is good there. But if we have to cooperate, for example, have a brainstorm session, and cooperate, competition is not the place there. So just to be more aware of where we are using these things. For example, I think measuring learning, giving numbers, for example, and grades, has nothing to do with learning. It's just something we produce for the safety of some people.
But for example, for me as a student, having a system that would reward my work was motivating for me.
I think there is really a healthy competition, which is not bad at all, but there is also, let's say, a structure of competition where the energy that you gain comes out of the bad situation of the others. No, you know what I mean? Where you grow because you can suppress others. This sort of competition is just not.
Of course, I'm not supporting that.
But when you take a challenge and you know all the others are better, but I want to be better than them, and you take this to develop yourself, then why not? This can be a very good motivation. But it is, yeah. It is not let's say, it's not very often, this positive, motivated competition.
And it's also, if you get rewards from what you're doing, I think there's lots of scientific research from 1940, since 1940, done on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And for example, like it's Daniel Pink's book, Drive, What Motivates People. One of the statements in that book is that it was shocking to me that if you get reward from intellectual work, actually your performance will be more weak. And that's kind of shocking because, but it's been researched. I mean.
Just one final thought. I'm sorry.
Just to give. There's a few more people. We don't have so much time left. I'm going to give at least two more people time for short comments or questions, and because well, actually, there's a lot of hands. Well, we start with the two that I have. I'm sorry to cut you off, but just to try to be more equitable.
Hi. It's unrelated to the discussion so far, but one thing that I would like, I don't know who to comment or. Is sometimes I think that social conformity, so this idea that you abide by the group, may actually be very important for coordinated action and cooperation. So I was wondering if you know, because people normally think of social conformity as something bad, like the ridiculous guy in the elevator that turns with everyone else and won't help because nobody else is helping. But maybe this is actually the other side of the coin for the possibility that we're actually very cooperative subjects. So I was wondering if there's any studies that actually show a correlation between these things, or any experiments that you've tried out where you can actually see this kind of correlation, where people that tend to follow more the others are actually the ones that tend to be more cooperative.
Well, I mean, social conformity is, ubiquitous, as you said. It's prevalent, and yet it is thought to, not conforming individuals do tend to suffer punishment and costs. The other issue that relates to social conformity, of course, is religion. And one can ask, why is religion so common as a sort of, in my opinion, a form of superstition that allow people to, and the one paper that I'm aware of published in the journal Science looks at secular versus religious communities and controls for various factors like where they were, what size they were. And it turns out that religious communities tend to last much, much longer before collapsing. I mean, these communities have a sort of half-life. And the religious communities tend to last longer, which gives some evidence, suggestive evidence, that religion could be an adaptive social norm, like having these social normative behaviors. And another example relates to things like Quaker communities during, the whaling communities along the eastern seaboard in the US experienced overfishing, and they had to go further to get whales, and it was much more difficult. And there was a lot of competition between these communities, and the communities that tended to survive were Quaker communities, because the Quakers tended to pool resources for the public good. And so it's then thought that these normative behaviors, could actually be potentially adaptive to these types of communities. These are some possibilities for conformity.
And also there's lots of research done on mirror cells in our brains. For example, statuses are about one part of that, because as you see us now, we are just unconsciously using like same amount of space approximately, because if I change dramatically mine, I would stand out, or they will maybe do something or not. But if I'm like this all the time, you would see me as different. Or if I'm like this all the time, you would see me as different, and they would probably react at some point. So I think we are naturally following and mirroring our body language also, and it's a natural thing to do.
May I add something out of the point of view of community? When I'm part of a community, then I know that I have to be in a ring of individuals that are in their highest potential. Mm-hmm. If I want to have a strong community. So I will do a lot to install feedback loops that feedback the strength back to the people. So I will do the opposite. I will not support that we get the same, but I will encourage the people to be who they are. Because a strong community is made out of strong individuals.
But conformity and being a strong individual is not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we're going to hear from one more person from the audience before we continue the discussion, hopefully outside. But so, who got the floor?
I'll try to be brief. This is unrelated. It's more related to interactions at an individual level. Me to you, for example. It's a story, something that's happened to me while I was browsing actually my Facebook feed. And someone I know posted a video, and that video showed a recent situation, I think, that happened in the US, if I recall correctly, about someone that had fallen on the train tracks, and nobody had helped. So I look at that and instantly say, oh, that's the Genovese syndrome. That's the bystander effect that we've talked about today. So I, a bit naively, went to Wikipedia and got two links. One about the bystander effect and another about the diffusion of responsibility, thinking I would actually inform people about that situation. Well, much to my surprise, the response I got was, but Gabriel, that's no excuse, not any of both things you posted. And I was sort of flabbergasted. I mean, I had no answer to that. And I wanted to ask you all, both the audience and the speakers, what would you have answered? Like, you know what you just said was true, you know the facts, you know the both things, and they had a completely different interpretation. And with one phrase, they sort of completely shut you down. What do you answer to make your point concisely and clearly and, you know, based on the facts? Because it might actually take you a lot more than one line to explain that, if you get what I mean.
I don't know, I would say something like, personally, I don't accept the thing that happened, what I saw here, but I also recognize that this is the bystander effect.
It's a very strong effect, as was said in the opening talk. No one wants to think that they would be susceptible to this effect, but they are.
We are raising awareness slowly. Thank you all for participating in the roundtable. I think at least some of you will be still around for some time, and I encourage those of you who didn't get to ask questions to ask one another or to seek out a speaker, and I think they'll be very happy to talk to you. Rita has a few closing remarks or thank yous, and thank you.
I didn't get the story of the last question.